Extreme suffering for trivial pleasure is morally indefensible.
What makes you think that what I'm doing is trivial?
Its legs break under its own weight. It goes blind because...
Right, so who is to say necessarily that we believe that that is the most optimal way of raising animals? Is there an alternative for actually consuming meat that is derived from the killing of an animal? That doesn't have to do with factory farming.
Has its throat slit alongside 10,000 or so of its...
Right, so appeal to emotion.
I'm happy to talk about that, but if you can just say...
No, you're clearly not happy to talk about it because you keep cutting him off. One vegan versus 20 meat eaters.
Do you think we should reduce the amount of pain that plants are experiencing?
Yes, we should.
They don't experience pain. They don't have a nervous system. Wrong response from this woman, unfortunately.
Plants matter. Hashtag plants matter.
Plants are life. They should be considered as part of the ecosystem because any large disruption in any life is something to consider when it comes to the health of the ecosystem of which we are a part of.
Not addressing my points. You are not addressing my points. You are deflecting because I literally backed you into a corner.
You can have sex and it was unethical, non-consensual, but it was great. Or you can have the consensual sex and it's not quite as good. Which one do you pick?
Probably a cheeseburger.
Is eating meat...
Right. Okay. So what we are going to see is a skewed set of individuals from both sides, for representatives of both sides of the aisle. One person representing the vegan argument, which I think is going to be artificially more intelligent than the average vegan. And, well, I was going to say 20 people that represent a carnivorous style of eating, except none of them do. They are meat eaters, which means you can eat a ounce of steak a week and be considered a meat eater, okay? So notice the problem here. Notice the problem with the framing and the setup. Jubilee has a very clear tilt, and so they're not intellectually honest. So I'm not expecting this to be a good sort of simple random sample, so to speak, when it comes to the representatives of meat eaters. Not to mention, once again, to mention, because I did mention it already, that meat eaters are all across the board. That's way too broad of a demographic of people. So.
Or has the conversation around veganism and ethical dieting become too rigid and moralized? I'm John.
Veganism is evil. End of discussion. Veganism is evil. I've done a live stream about that very topic. I'll link at the top right corner of the screen. I have a video called Vegans Hate Humans More Than They Love Animals, because what you actually believe is reflected in what you do more than what you say. What are the effects of the practical implementation of your ideology? Okay, and I wrote about it in my book. And I should probably write about it more extensively.
And from Jubilee Media, this is Surrounded, where one brave soul faces a room full of disagreeers. Today, we're diving headfirst into veganism, factory farming, and what it means to eat ethically. I'm here in the center with our featured guest, Dr. Jack Symes. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Are you ready to debate the circle?
Sure am. I'm looking forward to hearing what reasons they've brought for their unethical lifestyles.
Are you
No.
ready to bring your best arguments? All right, let's get into it.
My first surrounded claim is extreme suffering for trivial pleasure is morally indefensible.
Okay, so trivial pleasure. That's the premise that I would disagree with. What makes you think that what I'm doing is trivial? That's the question that you must respond with. Extreme suffering for trivial pleasure is morally indefensible. So this sounds like a straw man argument. Where have we ever said that extreme suffering is morally defensible if you're performing such a thing or committing such a thing for trivial pleasure? When have we ever said that? And what has made you believe, if we haven't explicitly said that I'm implicitly agreeing with that and holding that position?
If you'd like to be the first debater, get to the chair in 3, 2, 1.
Easy, lad. Dr. Jack.
Nice to meet you.
Hey,
What's your name, sorry?
I'm Dr. Pete. Nice to meet you.
Hey, Dr. Pete.
So I am very excited about this topic. I think it's super interesting that it touches on so much and all sorts of food. So I'm an emergency medicine physician.
Do you want to, on the claim I made, first of all, do you want to, do you disagree with that first?
I do.
Okay, so patronizing, frankly. It'd be one thing if he was actually running this event himself to keep people in check and make sure that, people are not going over time and not waffling. You don't run this event, bud.
I do.
You disagree? Extreme suffering for trivial pleasure is morally
I do.
indefensible. Can I give you the reason, then you can disagree?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think this principle comes from any of the major world philosophies. So you could be religious or not religious. You could be a Christian, a Jew, a Muslim. You could be a Hindu, a Sikh. You could be a Buddhist. Or you could have one of the secular moral philosophies as well. You could be an Aristotelian, a utilitarian, an existentialist. But the easiest way to understand it is just being a utilitarian, right? A good action is one where you create lots of happiness and pleasure and very little pain and suffering. But unfortunately, when it comes to factory farming, it's the other way around in our treatment of non-human animals in general. Quick example.
What is the effect on the human body of eating a plant-based diet? And if it absolutely happens to be a deviation away from what is appropriate for us to be consuming, evolutionarily, does that pose risks to the organism, and is that ethical? What is the value of human life to you in your hierarchy of values? Why don't we go ahead and ask that question? So where do we as human beings lie in your value hierarchy? And why are we at the bottom? Or the top, I guess, if you're talking about the pyramid, right, in terms of significance.
Jump in. A broiler chicken exists for 6 weeks. As soon as it's born, it has its beak clipped off with a guillotine. It's put in a cage so small it can't move. It's pumped full of food for 6 weeks straight, so fast that its organs fail, its legs break under its own weight. It goes blind because...
Right, so who is to say necessarily that we believe that that is the most optimal way of raising animals and subsequently eating those animals after they have been slaughtered for, well, human consumption? Who is to say that? Is there an alternative for actually consuming meat that is derived from the killing of an animal? That doesn't have to do with factory farming. Dr. Jack Symes.
Toxins in its own feces, and then it has its throat slit alongside 10,000 or so of its...
Right, so appeal to emotion. Okay, we know that they're absolutely dying. Okay, so would you agree that we can both agree that we should be treating animals better before we consume them? Would you believe that it is better? Would you agree that it is better to not impose or induce gratuitous harm to an animal without necessarily saying that you shouldn't be consuming the animals?
I think that's an extreme amount of pain and suffering for what is trivial pleasure.
Right, and that is based on a premise that I disagree with.
Which is the taste on your lips. Would you agree?
Well, I'll say that all of civilization is about chasing triviality.
Well, hold on a minute. That's not the best response. Because... No. Because just because something is trivial doesn't necessarily mean... Just because we have a tendency to chase the trivial doesn't actually justify it morally.
At the same time, I think that suffering...
On that, do you think that's too much suffering for the...
I would definitely also say that suffering is inevitable and it's essential.
It's inevitable, but you can minimize it, right? Is there too much...
Right, you can minimize the suffering without actually abstaining from the consumption of animals. Would you agree, Jack?
So as an emergency medicine doc who takes care of suffering all the time...
I'm happy to talk about that, but if you can just say, is that too...
No, you're clearly not happy to talk about it because you keep cutting him off.
Suffering imparted onto the chicken.
That particular example?
Yeah.
Clearly a very skilled debater here, Dr. Jack Symes, because as much as he is intellectually dishonest in his methods, it doesn't mean necessarily that if you're intellectually dishonest that you won't win a debate. In many cases, you can actually win a debate by being intellectually dishonest because you suppress the other person's, speaking abilities, because a lot of times the other people are too agreeable and they don't push back enough. They actually they remain moral within the dynamic that is existing and occurring at that moment.
Whatever it takes.
Whatever
it takes to sustain 8 billion people across the world, I would say is not trivial.
Right, so that's not trivial. So that's actually a good response. So now it's going to get into an argument of, oh, well, are you saying that veganism isn't sustainable? Really, the correct question, actually, if Dr. Jack were intelligent enough or adroit enough is really what we should say, is what do you mean by sustainable? What do you mean by sustainable? See, I've thought about these things very deeply, very, very, very deeply. And unfortunately, most of the people that are featured on Jubilee panels haven't thought about these things very deeply before they actually go on. A lot of times they're actually trying to raise their status in the perception of the public eye and aggrandize themselves in the perception of impressionable people. And they're using this as a marketing opportunity, which, by the way, isn't exactly the least intelligent thing to do. But anyway, Dr. Jack Symes, what makes you think that a vegan diet is sustainable? That is actually a positive claim on your part. You must prove that.
8 billion people without having animal agriculture.
It's possible.
Right. So is mere sustainability actually conducive to thriving necessarily? Okay. So do you believe that human beings should be thriving, or do you believe that human beings should actually be just merely sustaining themselves? Lots of questions that you can ask Dr. Jack Symes here. Now, I understand the pressure's on with these people, and so, you know, that influences and interferes with their ability to be as reflexive in their responses, among other things, but these things matter. These things, this is why I'm here, making this video right now.
You hear the mechanistic argument for that, but I will say, as a philosophy, you're a philosopher, I'm an ER doctor.
Well, there are 30 to
Wait, oh, he's a philosopher. So when we say doctor, we mean like actual, like what doctor traditionally meant. PhD. Dr. Philosophy. Wow.
50 million children that are dying every year from starvation. UNICEF put it at 30 million. Dr. Richard Oplander puts it at 60 million. And so every year you got 30 to 60 million. In 82% of those cases, the children are dying in places where the majority of the meat has been given to cattle and sold to more affluent countries. That's Ethiopia. That's Sudan. Sudan is the hungriest country.
What does that have anything to do with anything that's been being talked about right now?
Major in the world, and it has one of the biggest livestocks in all of Africa. So you can feed these people if you go to plant-based. You need 75.
Okay, so is merely feeding someone actually appropriate for them if it leads to disease down the line? Or if it is contraindicated for the species at hand? Because would you agree, Dr. Jack, that we are a species? We are members of a species.
Less land, and the amount of agriculture which is used towards supporting these non-human animals to slaughter them, that's more
Non-human animals? Okay, good. So that's very, very clear vegan language. Technically correct, by the way, because humans are animals, and we talk about other animals, and we sort of separate them by category as if we're not animals. Depending on context, I think it's actually justified to talk about us in different ways. But I mean, yeah, fair enough.
biggest causes of not being able to
You're
feed
talking about a massive problem across billions of people across many geographies, and I think what you bring up is probably true. But at the same time, I don't think the solution to it is just either you're vegan or you're not. And what I mean to say is this:
Correct.
suffering is that.
Not to mention, you need to start asking him questions. You need to put him on the back foot. You need to actually ask him, what makes you think that veganism is actually ethical in this respect? Okay, what is your metric by which, what is the proxy by which you measure something as ethical? The absolute amount of animal deaths? Because if that's the case, veganism has a real problem there. Okay, the minimization of pain and exploitation of animals, well, same thing there, has a real big problem there, considering the fact that even if it's not directly imposing and causing problems with other species in terms of their lives, like, other animals that are directly killed in the acquisition of meat for the consumption by human beings, or other animals like, I don't know, cats and other obligate carnivores. It doesn't mean that it isn't having an effect, okay? And if it makes you feel better to have plants on your plate because it's not a direct result or a direct function of animal suffering and actual animal slaughter, well, that doesn't take away, that doesn't actually change the fact that veganism contributes to more animal deaths on an absolute level than any other diet does, frankly. Sorry. Just the facts, though. Logic and also overarching epistemology that's based on top of that. The logic undergirds the statistics.
When you take care of people with strokes, heart attacks, domestic abuse, bear attacks, they're also violent predators that eat all sorts of things in addition to us. You start to understand that there's two types of suffering. And I think that's the most important part. Two types of suffering. There's senseless suffering and there's meaningful suffering. And I think what you have to understand is that...
Okay, so now what it sounds like is that he is saying that the suffering of animals is meaningful. But again, meaningful is too broad of a term because I do believe that it is meaningful. However, if you can minimize the suffering while also still acquiring the intended result, which is the ultimate result, the actual purpose of what you're doing, which is the acquisition of species-appropriate food for your species, well... I mean, you can still minimize the suffering there, and so that's actually what I think the problem is with this debater here.
You can create meaning.
The argument
behind suffering.
It's gratuitous suffering. That's the main thing.
Yeah, gratuitous suffering. Right. Now you need to ask the question as to what makes the suffering of those animals gratuitous, and if we agree on certain elements of those, can we minimize and agree that we should be eliminating that gratuitous suffering while also accepting the fact that it is not necessary that when you remove that gratuitous suffering, you must go vegan in order to do so.
It's a necessary suffering, and that's the vegan claim. That I take veganism to be the practical ethical rule to avoid products and practices that cause unnecessary suffering. So would you agree that if you...
Okay, well, is it unnecessary to be destroying natural animals' habitats and killing them through the tilling process alone of monocrop industrial agricultural farming? Is that necessary or unnecessary, Dr. Jack Symes?
Something without the suffering, you ought to do it without the suffering, yes or no?
Are you against domestication
if you
of
answer
livestock?
that,
Notice how he's actually pretty good at debating because he's asking questions. See that? See how he's putting the other person on the back foot, even if he's wrong? See how that actually is very persuasive to an audience member? See how it doesn't make it to where you're correct if you're persuasive? If you win a debate? See how that works? This gets to a broader point about debate and persuasion, okay? Notice what he's doing here, because this person is losing the debate. And it's not merely to do with the fact that he has not thought about these things very deeply as compared to Dr. Jack Symes. But that's part of it. But you know, it's also because of the persuasion methods.
to respond? If you think you can do something without suffering, or you do that.
I don't think avoiding suffering is the highest good.
What is the high?
Okay, so what the correct response is to Dr. Jack Symes here is what makes you think that the suffering of the animals that I consume is gratuitous? And if it is gratuitous, can we agree that the way to mitigate that gratuitous harm is not only achieved by going vegan? Yes or no, Dr. Jack Symes?
Good. I've just told you that every major
The
world
highest
philosophy.
good is meaning.
I've just told you every single major
Yes.
world religion,
The
and
only
every
commonality
secular
with major
philosophy
religions is that they're all
thinks
human
that
beings.
extreme suffering
They're all human beings that
does
deal
not
with
justify
inevitability.
trivial pleasure. Can you name one world philosophy that thinks?
Okay, so trivial pleasure. What makes you think that me eating meat is merely to do with trivial pleasure? Okay, are there plenty of people that do things for trivial pleasure that other people that do the exact same thing are not doing for trivial pleasure? Yes or no? Okay, so obviously he would say, well, no, not necessarily the case that they both do them for the same reasons. Okay, so if that's the case, what would you say if I told you that I'm not doing it just because things taste good? That's a serendipitous, fortuitous effect of me eating animals. Okay, what if I told you that it was for an ulterior reason? What if I told you that I'd be willing to go vegan if you actually were having, or if it actually were representative of the ultimate sort of morally superior position, ideologically and really theologically? Okay, we need to talk about, the question here is, Dr. Jack Symes, what makes your position ethical in your opinion? Because really, I mean, you want to talk about moral relativism versus objective reality and objective morality. That's going to be a conversation for another day that won't go anywhere because people have been arguing about that for millennia. Okay. But what is your perception? What is your criteria by which something is moral and immoral in this framework? Are you utilitarian? Because if so, well, that means that you are really focused on absolute animal deaths, minimizing absolute animal deaths and also animal exploitation. Okay. And then we can have a conversation there and we can actually start talking about the logic and also the, you know, again, I can't think of, you know, we could talk about the statistics and the undergirding logic and, you know, the subordinate logic, not subordinate, foundational logic. Okay.
Extreme suffering can justify trivial pleasure?
I don't need to name a
Do I think that extreme suffering for trivial? No. I reject your question entirely. Why are you asking that question? Are you suggesting that I am doing what I'm doing for trivial pleasure, Dr. Jack Symes? Are you suggesting that I'm doing what I'm doing for trivial pleasure? Is there a way to mitigate extreme suffering without going vegan? And also, does a vegan diet also contribute to extreme suffering that's more indirect, that's just more indirect than directly causal? Dr. Jack Symes.
I think what it is that in the ER, in reality, when I'm taking care of people recently diagnosed with cancer, or they have a child that died, etc.
Well, that's significant. Look, there are two big studies on overall general health outcomes. The EPIC survey at the University of Oxford looked at 500,000 people over the last 30 years, and the Christian Adventist study in the United States of America that looked at 75,000 people. In both these studies, it's found that you're likely to live significantly longer, less risk of heart disease, less risk of cancer.
No, not likely. That actually invokes probability. You can't invoke actual actually the word likely, because that implies a cause and effect statement. Likelihood is invoking probability, and probability is a prediction model. It is a causal term when you use the word likely, more likely, less likely, false. You have no idea how to interpret science. What's your experience with interpreting science? Do you know anything about statistics, descriptive or inferential? Do you know anything about that? Or are you just espousing a bunch of stuff that you heard online that fits your narrative? Dr. Jack Symes. Are you aware of the Adventist Health Study number 2, in which they actually used multivariate regression in order to inflate the power of the results in their regression analyses to show that actually, according to the raw health outcome data, that actually the people that lived the longest were people that were eating the most meat? Are you aware of what they did in that study? Do you know what multivariate regression is? What's your familiarity with biostatistics and regression analysis? Do you know anything about that, Dr. Jack Symes? Or are you just espousing a bunch of nonsense that you heard from plant-based propaganda that's bought and paid for and was actually helped to be shaped over the course of decades and decades and decades by the Seventh-day Adventists, by, I don't know, the government in order to hide their effects of inflation, or, I don't know, the medical industrial complex because they actually profit off of sickness, and they profit off of a lot of these drugs that these plant-based foods cause because they're carbohydrate rich, and it also involves a lot of vegetable oils that are contraindicated for human consumption according to evolutionary biology and what's indicated according to the Darwinian principles of evolution, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, blah, blah, blah. Dr. Jack Symes. Why don't we go ahead and ask the real questions here? Why don't we get to the root of your ideology here, which is extremely wobbly? Why don't we go ahead and do that, okay, Dr. Jack Symes? Why do you believe that veganism is ethical? Why do you believe that me eating meat is merely to do with trivial pleasure? What makes you think that? What makes you think that that's why I'm doing that? How dare you accuse me of that? How dare you accuse me of that? Is the only way to mitigate extreme suffering through the adoption of a vegan diet? Is that the only way to mitigate suffering? Does your vegan diet contribute to suffering as well? And if so, why don't we talk about that? Unbelievable.
Risk of diabetes, less risk of obesity.
No, risk is a cause and effect statement. There are no studies that can inform upon the risk of any hard health outcome or disease process as it relates to any aspect of human nutrition over any given period of time throughout the entire time human nutrition science has existed. There never has been, and there never will be. In order to do that, you have to take two genetically identical twins, both phenotypically and genotypically identical, separate them at birth, put them into two metabolic ward lock-in rooms, observe them over the entire lifetime that they live, if you're actually trying to assess and infer lifelong health outcomes, 40 years for 40-year-long health outcomes, etc., and control for every single confounding variable, including the time they wake up, the time they go to bed, their stress levels, their hormone levels, the time they eat, etc., etc. It's implausible. It's unethical. You want to talk about ethics? It's unethical. It wouldn't get past an ethics committee, and also it's exorbitantly expensive. We're done, Dr. Jack Symes. We're done. You have no idea how science is conducted. You have no idea how it ought to be conducted. You have no idea how to infer whether something is ethical or not when it comes to dietary inputs. It's very clear. You have evinced that here. You have demonstrated that here. We're done.
Vegan rather than eating meat. This is the most obese country on the face of the planet in terms of the...
Okay, are you suggesting that that's because of meat consumption? Because if that's the case, I'm a carnivore and I have been for years, and I eat over 100 grams of fat a day and over 100 grams of protein a day every single day with no activity really at all to speak of. I just started working out again, resistance training. It's very seldom that I do so. Why am I not fat? Do you think that maybe carbohydrates, which break down to glucose primarily in the body, actually directly in the gut, if it's not consumed directly as glucose, which in many cases it is, do you think that which is the most insulinogenic macronutrient, which by the way is not a macronutrient in the first place, check out a video that I did called Sugar Isn't a Nutrient, do you think that insulin being the prototypical anabolic hormone, anabolism being the building up and storing of things, including fatty acids and subsequent triglycerides for storage, do you think that might be the predominant influence over obesity, which itself can be a disease, but is actually mainly to be conceptualized as a symptom responsibly? Do you think that could be the problem? Do you think that the combination of both fats and carbohydrates could be the problem? What makes you think that meat is the problem there? Because now we're getting into actually a good conversation, which is, well, it's not really ethical if you're going to be harming yourself by consuming the thing, right? Because humans are invaluable while animals are valuable, but humans are invaluable, right?
Global, and so as being a major country.
I would agree.
75% of people in this country are overweight and obese.
I know it very clearly.
Actually, that statistic is based on population inferences. It's not actually, it's based on inferential statistics. It can't directly measure populations. It's based on sampling distributions. It's based on confidence intervals. It's a point estimate, to be fair, not an interval estimate, but it doesn't change the fact that that statistic is coming from a sample or a set of samples that are representative purportedly of the overall population, but really it's not. It's based on error measurements, so not measurements at all, but errors, and it's also based on populations that are actually completely mathematically constructed, the population they're actually informing upon. I am not sitting here and dissenting from the position that the country is exorbitantly, the Western world broadly actually is extremely obese. But that statistic is way too much conviction for the realm of responsibility and responsible reporting. It doesn't fit within that realm. So, sorry.
For their health as well.
Pause. You've been voted out by the majority.
Cheers.
Please go back to your
Thank
seat.
you. Hey, nice to meet you.
How can you argue with someone that literally believes that you're a murderer? I mean, seriously. How do you even sit down with people like this? Literally, the only reason why you sit down with people like this is if there's a huge demand to really get to the truth behind, what position is ethical. So not actually to have a conversation with the other person and persuade the other person, but just to persuade everyone else that's watching. That's really the only reason why you would do this. This is ridiculous. This person thinks that if you eat animals, you are a murderer. You're contributing to a genocide. This person's an absolute moron, and in fact, he's a misanthrope.
How's it going, bud?
Dr. Soms?
Man, you got to get rid of those shoes. You'll be able to get to that chair.
Meet you. What's your name, sorry?
My name is Brian.
Nice to meet you, Brian.
You have a PhD in philosophy?
I do, yeah.
That was my
Right. Okay. So what makes you think, okay, well, to be fair, if veganism is an ethical position, ethics is part of philosophy. So I guess it makes more sense for a philosopher to talk about veganism than someone that's a nutritionist or dietitian.
Oh, cool. Nice.
Okay.
Where'd you study?
Philosophy.
Yeah.
Oh, what do you mean?
Where did you study?
Oh, University of Texas, San Antonio.
Very nice.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
actually
physical
went to
science.
the National Ethics Bowl.
Oh, cool.
in
That's-
Notice how you're willing to have this conversation with him, which has nothing actually to do with anything that the prompt has to do with. But with the other guy, you went straight into the conversation. What was that about?
Great.
Yeah.
Awesome. So let's talk. What do you think of the claim? I made the claim earlier to one of your peers that there's no major world philosophy that thinks that extreme suffering justifies
course.
trivial pleasure. Would you agree with that?
So can we just stick like point by point rather than bouncing around? I just want to.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So
just that claim.
so what I heard from you.
Okay, but there's a lot, wouldn't you agree, Jack, that there's a lot lumped in that claim? There's a lot of things that we need to dissect instead of just addressing it as a yes or no statement. Do you believe, wouldn't you agree that demanding or at least humbly requesting a direct answer for yes or no to a question that's built on so many presuppositions and assumptions is actually a little bit reductionist and is missing a lot of context and is a way to basically lead people to a conclusion that makes them look a little silly? Don't you believe that that's the case? Wouldn't you agree with that?
You believe in minimalizing suffering.
I think all of the major world philosophies hold
Correct.
some version of that to be true. Yeah.
So I will not defend factory farming. There is another way of producing meat, and it is regenerative agriculture.
Right. However, what we do say is that there's a hierarchy of morality if it is the case that in order to actually have people of the human race consuming their species-appropriate diet, or at least the best approximation given their modern circumstances and given their current circumstances, is through factory farming methods, then that is more preferable to mass-scale monocrop industrial agricultural farming and shoving a bunch of plants down people's throats that have a bunch of anti-nutrients, plant toxins like carbohydrates and fiber, okay, that you tout to be so beneficial, which is based on an absolute pile of propaganda, absolute false propaganda. That's more preferable because humans are invaluable, animals are valuable, but humans are invaluable. Done.
Okay.
Because if we can't agree on that, then you have just evinced your absolute disdain for human beings. You have evinced the fact that you are a misanthrope. Let me ask you, Jack, if someone came to you and said, well, I am literally dying because of this vegan diet. I am dying because of this vegan diet. I am malnourished. I am this, that, the other thing. Would you tell them to stick to that diet even if it kills them, or would you tell them that it's acceptable to at least have some eggs? Because I'll tell you what, you say the latter, or if you say the former, you're a piece of shit. And I'm done. I am done, Jack, with giving you guys the benefit of the doubt, thinking, oh, you're just here to have an intellectually honest conversation. Don't give me the bullshit. You're looking at me and you think that I'm a murderer. You think everyone in that room is a murderer, Jack. That's what you think. You think that we are contributing to mass genocide of non-human animals. Non-human animals, which, by the way, yes, they are non-human animals, but so what? So what, Jack? You vegans are literally misanthropic. You're either that and or you're easily manipulated by emotional arguments because your rational intellect isn't as recruited as it should be for conversations like ethics, which is ironic considering that you are a PhD. You have a degree in philosophy. That is a little ironic, wouldn't you say, Dr. Jack Symes?
Regenerative agriculture reduces all of the harm. Okay?
Doesn't reduce all of the harm. The first,
Well, the majority of the harm, they live beautiful lives on regenerative
just
ranches.
one bad day, right?
Correct.
Right,
Just
absolutely.
one bad
And
day.
they
I've
don't-
had bad days,
and
bad
they
hair
don't know
days.
that it's coming,
achy
but they're
back.
serving.
No one's ever
They're
slit my
serving
throat
their
with
purpose.
10,000
But they're
slit my
okay. But
throat.
here's the
Right. Well, is there anyone else in the food chain that is actually above or beyond your value that is dependent on you for subserving their life through the consumption of your body?
Did they even exist in the first place if they weren't being harvested
Here
for
are
meat?
two-
No.
here are
Let
two
me just
things.
ask you a
The first
question.
thing to say-
Do they have the right to
I'll let you finish
exist?
and then I'll come
Yeah,
back.
Right. Good. Ask him questions.
cutting me off. Do they have the right to exist?
Boom. There you go. That's actually a secular point of view as opposed to a transcendental moral point of view. Do they have a right to exist like we do as human beings who have the right to life?
Because here's the deal. If you're saying that we should not harvest them, then those animals are never going to exist. So I guarantee if they had consciousness and
Right.
you put them down and you said, here are the scenarios,
finish, and then I'd
you
like
can
to speak.
either exist and you can have one bad day and you can serve a purpose and you can have a beautiful life. You can make a positive contribution to the environment.
Would you be happy if
can
your
make a,
purpose
can I
was
finish?
to be
Can I
slaughtered?
finish?
Yeah, but you're taking a bullet.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Yeah, why are you interrupting him, Dr. Jack Symes? I mean, unless of course you believe that his positions are based on presuppositions and premises that you reject, in which case it would actually be counterproductive to allow him to continue, because yes, you would actually be doing him a disservice. He'd be wasting his time. Okay.
I've heard the case. and I want to respond.
So when I die,
So
I want to be
there's a
buried
few
in the
things that you
soil
said that are
and I
wrong.
want to
The first thing to
decompose
say
so that my
is
carbon returns
conscientious
to
farming
grass.
is a myth. The conscientious farming is a myth because
You're not
addressing.
addressing
What do you mean conscientious farming? Define that.
points.
You're still
You are
gonna-
not addressing
I'm
my
gonna address
points.
them right
You are
now.
deflecting because I literally backed you into a corner.
Conscientious farming.
What about all of the mice?
There are more
What
important-
Now, okay, look. The framing is beneficial for him because he keeps talking, but at the end of the day, this is the problem with debates, man. I'm telling you. Debates are designed to dominate the other person. If your frame when you go into the debate is I'm only looking at this other person and I want other people to think that I'm winning, I want to win this, it's all about domination. If it is genuinely about persuasion, there are ways to have a debate, but the way to do it is to actually turn the debate into a conversation. You can put the other person on the back foot through a conversation. It's through the Socratic method. But this is what debates usually turn into. Or if they don't turn into them, they usually start from the beginning. They start from that angle. That's the problem.
the
like
rabbits
cows,
that
pigs,
die.
chickens,
Have you
and
ever spent
turkeys.
time on a farm?
Yeah, there's.
Have you
I've
ever
worked on a
talked farm to farmers? Okay.
Well, you've worked on a farm. Okay, so has that involved harvesting of plants?
How many
Worked on a
mice,
farm.
how many rabbits are murdered to produce
80%
vegetables?
of all of
How
the
many are
vegetables
murdered to
that are grown,
produce vegetables?
80% of all of them are fed to
won't address
factory
it. You
farms.
literally
I've
won't
just
address
told.
these-
Right. So who's saying that we should have that as the most optimal way of raising animals? Who says that I believe that that's the most optimal way of raising animals? It depends on circumstances, doesn't it? Let's say, for example, that there were no way. Hey, what if there were no way, Jack, to actually subsist off of only plant foods? That was the case before the Industrial Revolution. The only reason why you're able to eat your vegan diet so readily is because of the Industrial Revolution. What happens then? What's the most ethical approach? Starving to death, Jack? Or would you agree that there are certain circumstances that in which you should be eating meat? What would you say, Jack? What would you say? Oh, well, that's a hypothetical. That's not the real world. Really? You don't think so? You don't think there's areas of the world that actually that only have access to encounters of meat? Not ready access to, I don't know, plant foods that are around them? Would you agree that it depends on context?
80% of all of soy is given to non-human animals.
Right, just covered that.
Only
I'm going to
7%
stop you right there. I'm going to stop you
is
right there.
given to
The
human
soy
beings.
is
I'll let
grown
you
for the
speak, so I'll
oil.
carry
The
on.
soy is grown for the oil.
So
It
the
is literally
overwhelming majority-
extracted.
Hannah
The
Ritchie
leftover
says-
product is then fed to cattle. That is a
You're not
manipulation.
Okay, I suppose that's actually. I think that's a secondary point, or maybe even a tertiary point in terms of its significance and in terms of its effectiveness. But okay, fine, acceptable.
Statistic.
You're not here for
I am here for discussion. You won't address the
75
points.
I've just
You-
responded.
no,
Let
no,
me
no.
respond.
Go
then.
back
Let
to
me
the
Jack, come on.
Let
Go
me
back to the
respond.
soy.
Let me respond
Go back
one
to the
thing.
soy.
Yeah,
Go
I
back
am.
to the soy.
75% reduction, according to Hannah Ritchie in 2022. She says that's our world in data. You get a 75% reduction in all agricultural land. 30% of all your agricultural land is given to cattle. We've got 80 to 90%
you're not
species
addressing the
extinction.
soy
You've got
statistic that
80
you
to
just brought up.
90% species
You're not
extinction.
addressing the
You've got
soy
90%
statistic.
I'm not pausing you right now because I've pretty much covered all these points. They're going in circles.
deforestation.
85%. It is literally the byproduct. They grow the soy for the oil. Even if it wasn't being fed to the animals, they would still
that's
grow
not
the soy.
True. Only
That is
13%
true.
of it.
That is true.
I've got the reference right here.
Yeah, and you don't understand the statistics.
Isn't that an unfair? Isn't that a disadvantage? Isn't that extremely unfair? I suppose it's not unfair if these people are told that they can bring that stuff with them, in which case it wouldn't be unfair. It would actually be it would have been a shortcoming on their behalf, on their end. But
You go and actually look at the statistic. All of the soy is taken, the oil is suppressed, and then the byproduct is what is fed to the animal. And it is 85% of it is left over, and that's what's
As
fed
I've
to the
just
animal.
said, 80 to 90% according to the WWF and the
You're
UN.
deflecting.
Why?
You
How's
are
that?
deflecting.
Tell me how that's deflecting.
You are deflecting.
Tell me how that's deflecting.
good question on Jack's behalf, actually. That was good.
brought up a statistic, and you said that 85% of soy is
Better question would be, okay, so how do you think I should respond? How would you respond if someone asked you that question? What kind of question asking framework do you want from me? And is most effective
Is
to
it
cattle.
80%?
80, whatever you said. You said the majority of soy is fed
and appropriate?
to cattle, did you not?
I said 80%.
Yeah, okay, 80. So really, now you're going to argue about 5%. You understand the intent. So you're saying that the majority
Well, okay.
soy is fed to cattle, and
Yes.
I'm telling you that is inaccurate. It's not as if the soybean in it. Listen to me. It's the nuance. It is the nuance that you were trying to
He's talking more calmly too. Look at that. That matters.
reflect with. It is not as if 80% of all soy is fed to cattle in
Here's
its
what's happening.
natural state.
The
The
overwhelming
oil is
majority of
extracted,
land
and then
in
the
USA
byproduct is
being
fed.
used because of factory farming for the raising cattle.
I'm not defending
80
factory
to
farming.
90%
I am
of all
not
your
defending
wildlife
factory
extinction.
farming.
Your original
Argue
point,
against
your
regenerative
original point was
agriculture.
that having cows,
Argue
pigs, chickens,
against regenerative
turkeys.
agriculture.
Yes.
Okay, let me skip to the next claim here because we only have so much time. What is the second claim here? I'm curious to hear this one.
My next surrounded claim is that everyone should aim to be vegan.
Well, it depends on what you mean by vegan. Define vegan, because if veganism is the moral standpoint that suggests that we should be aiming to minimize animal exploitation and gratuitous animal harm, then I believe that 100%, which is why I'm carnivore. Done.
All right, if you would like to be the first debater for this claim, get to the chair in 3, 2, 1.
Hi,
Hey, what's your name?
Nathan.
Nice to meet you, Nathan.
Nice
How
to meet
goes
you
it?
as well. It goes pretty good. Yeah.
So the claim everyone should aim to be vegan, you happy with it?
No, and here's why.
Define veganism.
I am a third-year med student, and so I'm going to be a physician, Lord willing, next year. So my goal is to take care of.
Okay, this guy is nervous, and I really, I understand. But that may interfere with his performance.
Patients. And I will actually come out and say that the vegan diet tends to be healthier.
No, there's no evidence to support that claim whatsoever. Done. We are done. There's literally no evidence to prove that claim whatsoever, even remotely supporting that, actually. Compared to what? Relative to what?
Absolutely.
Great.
I don't think there's much dispute over that. You can look at the evidence. It is.
Okay, no, you don't have to interpret evidence, all right? No personal, I don't mean anything personal whenever I say that claim, but it's clear that you don't understand how to interpret evidence, and it's clear that Dr. Jack Stimes doesn't know how to interpret evidence either, because when you say evidence, you were talking about statistics, descriptive and or inferential, and it takes some understanding of mathematics and some analyses and statistical metrics like this, some fundamental understanding of the central limit theorem and all that stuff, and the sampling distribution and the population distribution and the sample distribution and all that stuff to actually understand what the hell to do whenever you are encountering or faced with a paper on human nutrition science to really understand the numbers. But anyway.
It is healthier.
There we go.
However,
Do you want to swap seats?
however, biggest thing with the vegan diet from a physician's perspective that you have to think about is
there's not the vegan diet. There are multiple vegan diets that try and aim for the same thing, and they all have different effects on the body, even if they're marginal differences.
it's been mentioned a couple times is the micronutrient deficiencies that you
Right. Okay. So now we're talking about this from a health perspective. Good. This is actually the place to go. Okay. Because if you start talking about this, the first place that you should go is, okay, if someone were going to tell you that, oh, well, I'm suffering from this nutritional deficiency and it's actually putting my life at risk. You know, the question that I posed earlier, do I eat meat in order to save myself when I know that it will? Or would you rather me actually save, you know, to let myself die in order to save a cow, hypothetically? Or a few cows or a few chickens. What do you suggest? What do you suggest? And if that person tries to deflect, if they say that it would actually be morally superior to let yourself die, then you just end the conversation right there. They've exposed themselves. If they try and deflect and say, well, what makes you think this is based on a premise that a vegan diet is going to make you nutritionally deficient? Well, they've already conceded to you implicitly that it's wrong to choose the former. And so now you can have a health argument, can't you? You can have a health argument. And then what lens ought you to look at health through? The human nutrition science lens or the evolutionary biology lens? Well, then you can have that argument with them. You'll trounce them because usually they don't even think about health. They think about ethics. This guy is a doctor in philosophy for a reason. You can trounce them there. And then when you have the evolutionary argument, well, done. Vegan's not going to be, look, I just mentioned, you cannot sustain a vegan diet on even a garden that you grow yourself. Okay? Can't do that. You have to eat meat. So, we're done, Jack.
B12.
B12 is one of them.
Well, B12 is one of them, yes, but take a supplement. That's what they're going to say because it's all about ethics. It's not about, well, it's part of it is about health for them, but it's mainly about the ethics. And if they think that it's the most ethical thing to sustain at all costs a diet that does not have product of a direct product is what I should say of animal death and suffering, well, then they're going to say that you should be having supplementation because that's the moral way out.
So B12.
You happy just taking the tablet?
There you go. See? Done. This is how you deal with vegans. I already know exactly what the hell they're going to say.
No, but first, let me just talk for a second.
Why don't you agree with that? See, he can easily ask that. Why don't you agree with that? You have to learn, in order to actually be effective at arguing points, you have to learn how to play chess by yourself. That's what you do. Honestly, play chess by yourself. Seriously, go on one side of the board and you play your move. Then you go to the other side of the board and you play that move too. Just do it. Now, granted, that's not the best way of doing it, actually, because you know exactly what you're thinking because you're playing as yourself, but you need to role play a little bit. You need to play like a vegan. You need to act like a vegan sometimes. It's hard. You need to act like the opposition because that's how you think. That's how to think.
So for B12, it is a DNA precursor that helps synthesize red blood cells.
Yep.
When you don't have that, they become big and become what we call
Okay, well, that's not actually getting to his point. Why don't you just take the tablet?
And eventually, if you don't treat it long enough, you will have nerve damage. And
Okay, so why don't you take the tablet? See, I mean, this is a problem. Listen, I mean this constructively to this person, this individual. I don't mean this destructively. I'm not laughing at him. It's just, we're dealing with misanthropes on the stage here, and so it's very important that we are as adroit as possible whenever it comes to withstanding and contending with their argumentation.
Time and time again.
Early onset Alzheimer's, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm,
What
yes.
your girl earlier on was, she did the whole foods diet, and as I said then,
There is no the whole foods diet. You just slap a trademark on there and you're done. Really? Yeah. Is there a trademark on that?
take that B12 supplement.
So that's not
Right. Exactly. So take the B12 supplement. So what's the
the only
problem?
thing, though. That's the problem, is that we also have calcium. Calcium is very important for bone density.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're getting into other things. So supplement with those then. Why don't you just take 20 different supplements, my friend, just to stay on the diet that's purported to be the most ethical? Why don't you do that? Okay, so now, okay, we've destroyed his arguments that he's providing, his explanations that he's providing. So what is the alternative? What should he actually do? Well, again, get back to the actual moot. Everyone should aim to be vegan. What does it mean to be vegan? What are you talking about when you mean vegan? Define veganism. And then when they define it, okay, so are you suggesting that your diet? What diet are you eating right now? What makes you think that diet is the most ethical? What makes you think that actually fits the criteria by which something is to be considered vegan or not? Question. Back foot. They need to be on the back foot. They do. Not you. You 100% do not have the responsibility. It's not on you to be on the back foot. How dare they try and put you on the back foot? They're making the claim. They're making the positive claim here implicitly, not explicitly, but implicitly. Well, even explicitly, everyone should aim to be vegan. Why? What you need to do when you get up there immediately is you have a few options. There's always a few options. It's like having a dialogue in a video game where you have like 3 things to choose from. You always have a few options, or like a choose your own adventure book. Okay, you have a few options. Okay, the number one is define veganism, right? That's where I went first. Okay, but here, what's another thing that you could do? You go up there. I know easier said than done because pressure's on and everything. I understand, but from an outsider's perspective, what's one thing that you could do whenever you encounter one of these claims? You could go up there to the seat and you could say, okay, so say the moot again. Just tell them to say it again. I'm not even kidding. That immediately puts them on the back foot. They're probably not going to object to that. Maybe they will, and there's ways around that. But everyone should aim to be vegan. Do you agree with that? Why? Don't even answer their question. Why should everyone aim to be vegan? Now, of course, if they're smart too, they might go, well, why not? And they put it back on you. It's literally that dynamic the whole time. And they say, well, isn't it the responsibility of the person making the positive claim to actually provide evidence that we should be doing something? So why don't you go ahead and do so? Just keep going. Back foot, back foot, back foot. Go, 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 go.
30%, if you're vegan diets exclusively, you are 30% likelier to have...
No, not more likely. Sorry. More likely is a cause and effect statement, frankly. That is a cause and effect statement. More likely. Well, is that or is that not the same as saying that you have a 30% higher risk? Risk is a cause and effect statement. How is it not a cause and effect statement?
Fracture. And
Okay.
Jubilee, you can fact check me on that.
Well, I can fact check you real quick because that's not true.
No, but these are good, right? So the nutrition game, we can pick out all these
Sure,
little things,
absolutely.
but the overall health outcomes for the vegan are significantly better, aren't they?
Relative to what? So does that mean that the vegan diet is the most ethical and also the most healthful for human beings? Or does that mean that something is marginally better and also over how long of a duration? Over how long of a duration, under what controls, what was the relative outcome statistics converted into absolute outcome statistics? What was the strength of the association? Okay, what population was this actually conducted on? Was this applicable to me in any way, shape, or form? Did they have the same genotype and phenotype as me right now? Or you right now? Do you know any of this stuff at all? Do you know how to interpret scientific data? What's your training in scientific data interpretation? What's your training in any of that? What's your experience doing so?
It depends. So as a physician...
The EPIC study at the University of Oxford, you'll be familiar. The Christian Adventist study here at the United States.
Okay.
No. You don't know how to interpret that study. What did the raw outcome data say? See, ask a question. What did the raw outcome data say? Jack, do you know how to interpret that raw outcome data? Cite it. Let's read it right now.
That's, 700,000 people over 30 years who have been tracked.
Yes. What else were those people doing? What else were those people not doing? Is healthy user bias a thing or is unhealthy user bias a thing? Okay, do people lie? Do people forget? Was that based on respondent data? What was the average follow-up time? What was the average rate of follow-up? 2 to 4 years maybe? Because that's how it is on average. That's what it is on average across all of epidemiology. Can epidemiology actually prove cause and effect? What are the things were not being done by these people that may actually have led to those longer health outcomes? Not to mention the fact that the data was adjusted. Was the data adjusted via multivariate regression or not? What did the raw outcome data say? Once again, Jack.
20% less likely, you're going to...
Not less likely. There was a 20% lower incidence rate. What did the 20% figure actually convert into in absolute values? Do you know the answer to that question? Or are you just saying a bunch of nonsense because you heard it online?
Good life by about 20%, less likely to get cancer, less likely to get diabetes.
No. Anytime that you say less likely, more likely, equally likely, doesn't matter. Done. You're done. You have completely demonstrated your absolute incompetence when it comes to the interpretation of scientific literature. You're done.
Here's one, can I ask you one question? Because
Absolutely.
I'm really interested. So the United States, you've got a lot of fat people.
Yes.
A lot of obese people,
Yes.
a lot of overweight people. The Christian Adventist study here in the US is interesting because they look at people who have got a similar religious background, similar alcohol and smoking intake, which is very, very little.
Really? How do you know that? Can that change the next day? Is it constantly monitored? Is it constantly controlled, Dr. Jack? Do they actually look at those people? How is the study conducted? Is it observational? What does it mean to actually conduct an observational study? What was the actual methodology employed in this study? Do you actually know the answer to that question? Are you willing to tell me the answer to that question, Dr. Jack?
And it found that the vegans had 4 to 5 lower BMI points than the meat eaters.
Really? Okay, so does BMI actually discriminate based on muscle, fat, bone density? Does it discriminate based on any of that? Is lower BMI as a consequence of having lower bone density a good thing? Is having lower BMI as a consequence of having lower muscle mass on your body, is that a good thing? Is the sole criterion of health status based on your weight, even if it is in the form of fat? Can I lose a bunch of fat and do so in an unhealthy way? Can I cut my legs off and lose fat? Can I cut my legs off and have a lower rating, or a lower level of BMI? Imbecile.
Actually take you from
So,
obese to perfect.
I am
BMI.
not in favor of the current American diet. I want to make that very clear.
Yeah, exactly. It's a false dichotomy that he's drawing right here. You want to talk about logical fallacies. You want to talk about philosophy. That is a false dichotomy. That's the false dilemma.
The diet that I'm in favor of, and that I will mention to all my patients who are struggling with BMI, is the
Mediterranean, there we go. Yeah, so you have no idea what you're talking about with health either. You're just not vegan, right? So a Mediterranean diet is more an approximation of a vegan diet than it is an actual species-appropriate diet. You should be looking at the lens. You should be looking through the lens of evolutionary biology, which is supported, which actually, to draw inferences from that, you have to look at comparative anatomy, chemical anthropology, observational paleoanthropology, and certain elements of biochemistry. You should not be looking at it through the lens of human nutrition and science, which is really anything but science, but really nothing more than theology. Done.
diet, which I'm sure you are very aware of. It's actually very similar to the vegan diet in that it
Yeah, so that's a major problem.
has whole grains, legumes, seeds, fruits, and vegetables, which are all super important.
Why wouldn't you?
No, they're not. They're actually not. They're not necessary for human consumption, and in fact, they're contraindicated. We are not evolved to genotypically withstand those inputs across our genome. Okay, according to the Darwinian principles of evolution, according to observational paleoanthropology, according to certain elements of our biochemistry. Seriously, we're done with this argument. We are not designed to withstand the consumption of any of those.
The supplements? There was that
Because
study
why
by
would I
Young
take
and-
supplements when I could just have lean meats like chicken and
Well, because he believes that that's the morally superior thing to do. That's why that's why. It's because he believes that it's morally superior.
fish and turkey and things that I
That
really
study by
enjoy.
Junie Wang in 2019, where she
What type of study?
the fortifieds and the supplements will more easily absorbed by the body because they're already taken away from the fibers. So that's why you take
So I actually disagree with that because, so for instance, omega-3s, fish have omega-3s.
Sorry, hold on a minute. That really threw me for a loop. You probably thought that I was going to pause there, and I was really thinking, what the hell are you talking about? You have to analyze the actual integrity of that study, ultimately, when it comes to being faced with that claim. Seriously, are you suggesting, Dr. Jack, that it is more bioavailable to consume supplements than it is to consume the food directly? Are you serious? What happens whenever you don't consume food with fiber? What then?
You can get it from nuts as well,
So
though,
here's
right?
the thing:
You
is
can get
that
it
for
from
nuts, it's actually your body has to convert it to what it
You
needs.
take your omega-3 tablet.
No.
Right. What's the rate of conversion there, Dr. Jack? Do you actually have any physiology data on your little paper there that actually tells us anything about that? What's the rate of conversion? What does the omega-3 actually come in the form of? Do you even know that? Do you know anything about human nutrition? Because if not, then why are you having this conversation right now? Why are you even engaging? Why don't you just say that you don't know what you're talking about? What is the fat come in? What is the form of fat that it comes in? Okay, the answer to the question is alpha-linolenic acid, and it's supposed to be converted into the bioavailable, the active forms, DHA and EPA, docosahexaenoic acid and icosapentaenoic acid. Okay? But what is the rate of conversion in the people that have been studied under the conditions in which they have been studied? Do you actually know the rate of conversion? Because it's in the single percentage points.
Algae?
Omega-3 tablet, you need, so that's another tablet thing. Why would you do that when you could just take fish or something similar and just
there
be
are
able
a bunch
to
of
eat
reasons.
that?
There are a bunch of reasons. The one is the moral reason, which
Yeah, that's going to be his argument, necessary, and it's actually a superior one to the argument that he's providing. Why would I do that? Well, if he believes that his argument is morally superior and his position is morally superior, he's going to say because it's ethical, because it's morally superior. That's what he's going to say. Because if it were the case that it resulted in, it actually had its intended effects, then of course, yeah, it would absolutely be the moral option. If it was, conducive to the flourishing and the convivial health, the salubrious health of the human being and of every member of the human race, and it also mitigated all animal harm and gratuitous suffering, and it was the only way to do so, then it would be the morally superior option. Unfortunately, it's not. Okay? Well, I say unfortunately. I mean, fortunately for us, because meat. But I got a lot of energy today. Listen, if someone really comes up to me, if they really come up to me and they challenge me like that, you think I'm reflexive when I do a normal little sit-down video that's not directed at me, but it's directed to the average general populace? You think I'm reflexive then? Oh boy. Challenge me directly and see what happens. Now, of course, that doesn't mean that I'll actually give you any time whatsoever, because sometimes I think that it's not worth it at all. If you're not intellectually honest, That's going to be part of it. So people that are sitting here saying, well, why don't you debate, what's this Uproot Nutrition? Why don't you debate Uproot Nutrition? That man literally hates humanity. He hates his own life. He hates literally everybody. He is an antinatalist by his own admission. He is intellectually dishonest in debate. He uses pseudo-sophistication in order to addle the opponent and also to therefore persuade very impressionable, ignorant people of room-digit IQ that are watching the debate. Okay, he's rude. He's inconsiderate. He's a f***hole. Okay, there's no reason that anybody should be talking to that person. You should shun him. You should absolutely shun him. He's a loser. He's an absolute loser. And he's a dirtbag, and he's not getting anywhere in life. Okay? I'm not going to debate Uproot Nutrition. Debate him, bro. Is he really worth my time? Really? What's that going to do for anything?
Significant. Our oceans are being destroyed, 3 to 10 trillion.
What does that have anything? Is it being destroyed by me eating ruminant meat, Jack?
Being taken out of the ocean. People complain about shark fin soup and they don't want whales being killed. The bykill is absolutely enormous. And when you're talking about the suffering for the non-human animals as well.
Why don't we talk about the suffering that's a direct result from monocrop agricultural farming?
When you talk about the cost, the University of Oxford study in 2021 found it's 30% cheaper to have a vegan or vegetarian diet than it is to have a meat-based diet.
No, it's not. 100% false. What were the meat-based diets made up of? What were the cohorts that were actually studied? Was it for families? Was it for single-person households? Okay, what plant foods were actually being bought? How much of the plant foods were actually being consumed and how much were actually being thrown away before they were able to be eaten? Ridiculous nonsense.
And the fish pescatarian diet was the most expensive out of all of them. So it's more affordable. If you
Is that the case for every single region of the world? Or is there a different cost of living in different regions of the world, even in the same country?
$10,000 on groceries as a house each year, you're going to save $3,000 by going vegan. That's a very strong argument.
As compared to what? Relative to what? Doesn't it matter what we're actually comparing that to?
Going for the fish. You could eat pescatarian, but then you've got all of the destruction of the wildlife and you've got the killing of the animals and you've got the cost as well. Or you could just take that omega-3 and B12 tablet and you can significantly reduce your...
You also need to take calcium. You need to take
Irreduce.
D. You have to take selenium. You have to take iodide. Because
You don't have to do that necessarily.
95% of people in the US.
That's not a direct statistic. You can't directly inform upon the population. That is a rough estimate. A rough one, a very rough one, in fact.
Are vitamin D deficient.
Okay, deficient according to whom on the basis of what? Were they actually symptomatic or did they just register lower on a blood test? Because guess what? You can register lower on is it true that you can register lower on a blood test without actually having a deficiency in that value? What are those normative ranges based on? What population are those normative ranges based on, Jack?
that is fair. And we do
It's not fair at all.
prescribe that. But the thing
it's
is,
not unique to veganism,
as I've
right?
seen patients
Right, so he's right. It's not unique to veganism.
been rotating through different
Can
things.
you rank the diets in terms of healthiest? Would you go pescatarian, vegan?
I'd go Mediterranean.
You don't rank diets based on health because health is the absence of disease process. In order to responsibly consider something healthy from a scientific perspective, you have to provide a study from the field of human nutrition science that actually proves cause and effect relationships between the introduction of a certain dietary intervention and its direct causal relationship with the amelioration and or prevention of negative heart health outcomes, broadly speaking, because of the fact that health is the absence of disease process. We go based on what's indicated for our physiology according to the Darwinian principles of evolution and the subsequent principles of indication. It is evolutionarily appropriate to be consuming a meat-based diet. We're done.
First,
Yeah,
and
then vegan?
pescatarian, and then vegan.
Okay, so
Here's the important
we're
thing
not
for
too
me.
far away from each other.
We're not too far away, but here's the thing: is that
Oh, that's a problem.
I think about my patients, and I think about
Come see the light, my friend!
what is achievable for them, and the problem with, and I think
What's
a lot of us can
affordable
agree
for them?
with this.
What's affordable?
So
for them as well,
affordable,
right?
but also
Really? So if something is affordable, then therefore it's ethical? I know he's not saying that. Now I'm just trying to find things to say. I guess I should probably not say that.
But
Expensive to live
listen,
here.
can I?
Of course,
please?
sorry.
The other thing is, I've seen medication non-compliance. Like I myself take a medication.
Oh, this is weak. Who cares? That's not that's their fault. That's not. What? So therefore you should just give in and have the chicken because you can't responsibly? No. That's not how that's not correct.
Blood pressure, and I suck at it. And a lot of
Why do you have to take medication for blood pressure? Hypertension is very easily manageable with the proper human diet. Ken Berry. Ken Berry, are you watching? Are you watching, Ken Berry? Shout out.
So one of the biggest things in
Oh, give me a break with flax seeds. Are you out of your mind, Jack? Are you out of your mind? Man, it looks like your brain needs more DHA if your neural circuits are actually causing you to say something that asinine and inane. Are you out of your mind? Flax seeds? Oh, let me get my flax seeds. Let me have my little flax seeds, pour them on my oatmeal.
is that a lot of people actually are just not compliant with their medications. So
What is that? Just they don't take it.
they don't take it. So
Right. So what makes you think that means that it exonerates them? It exonerates them from performing the most ethical and undertaking the most ethical position on diet. This doesn't undermine his actual claim. It doesn't get to the heart of the matter, which is that veganism is extremely unethical when it comes to the actual, well, if we take veganism at its literal definitional value, it's not anti-human. Okay? It's not. The interpretation of it and the practical effects of the implementation of veganism based on those perceptions of what veganism actually is by people that proclaim to be vegan, that is unethical in practice. It doesn't matter. Look, road to hell, blah, blah, good intentions, blah, blah. We all get that.
it's either we have them high BMI, take a bunch of medications.
Yeah.
We do a vegan diet. We get
Okay, what is one of the other claims here? I want to figure this out. Factory farming is unethical. Okay, I already covered factory farming. Veganism is good for the world and humanity, so we already covered that one too. And meat eater claim, going completely vegan for the entire world at once is impossible. Oh, okay, so interesting claim there. That's interesting. It's not really too interesting. I don't really care that much about it. I think we covered basically the basics, like what you're actually going to learn here, all of the utility here. So you want to talk about utilitarianism? I mean, here you go. I've provided you with the things that you're going to get out of this, I think, of any utility. So look, check out those videos that I did on veganism. Read my book, Contraindicated, as well. If you're curious about learning about this book and actually how to, if you're curious about acquiring clarity when it comes to interpreting health and learning how you ought to eat and inferring how we ought not to eat collectively as a species, that's actually part of the lens. That's the function of the lens. It's a different way of thinking. If you're curious on how to, find that clarity, shifting over from that smudgy, foggy lens that we often look at human nutrition science through whenever we're first learning about it, and over to the one that, provides that clarity, provides that extra level of clarity. The first thing that I would do is refer to the free newsletter. It's in the description below. It's the only thing in the description. It takes 10 seconds to sign up. It is completely free. There's no catch to that. It is completely free. Okay? Sign up in the description below. Takes 10 seconds. First name, last name, email, done. Okay? Anything that I talk about. So, but especially my book, but also go check out, in the meantime, Veganism is Evil. And also, vegans hate humans more than they love animals, because that's the reality. I should be on Jubilee. That should be one of my claims. So my first claim is that vegans hate humans more than they love animals. I'm excited, man. You challenged me on a position that is clearly the most ethical position. My diet, a carnivore diet approach. Get ready. Frankly. Okay? So anyway, if you enjoyed this video, if you found it insightful, if you found a way to argue these concepts more, leave a like. Subscribe to me if you haven't already. If you haven't subscribed yet, are you a vegan? Are you Dr. Jack Symes? If not, why do you want to be like them? Leave a like and subscribe. Leave your thoughts in the comment section below as well if you haven't already. And once again, sign up for the free newsletter to learn about anything that I talk about, my health science community, my book, my biochemistry course that I'm building with the help of 20 early access members in that group, in that cohort, our CCI program, whatever it may be. And with that said, join me next time whenever we're reacting more nonsense online and more unethical, misanthropic bullshit. So,